time to come and enjoy this session with us. In short, we call it positive psychology. I learned something with the first session this morning, so we are really thankful that you are here. Approximately 2 years ago, that's not new news, we had the COVID pandemic started, and we were supposed to work we were sent home to start working there. Now, we had our challenges to start working at home. At first we were excited, now we're going to stay at home. And then after now 2 years, we are not so excited, some of us, to be back on campus. But I think with a session like this, we really wanted to be back on campus again, just to have a bit of interaction and just to see our colleagues. In the UK, just after the total lockdown, they said the people of the UK, they can meet with a person that were not living with them for outside. They can meet somebody, and they must have a 2-meter distance. Now, in South Africa, we were also supposed to, or we were just staying at home. Can you still remember who was the first person that you wanted to see after our total lockdown? Can you remember? Somebody special. I had a special friend. We used to run together, and we decided, okay, we're going to do our shopping together. So we met at the shop. Were there some of you that also saw your friends at the shops, just at the interaction? So maybe today you're seeing one of your colleagues that you thought, oh, I'm so glad to see you. I saw that. Is that the truth? So such events like this is really, we need that for our socialization. So yes, so welcome once again. And I just want, on behalf of OD and employer well-being, I would like to extend our gratitude to top management for their contribution and support of the OD employer wellness programs. I also want to say thank you to Star Sound, always on my side, and I can be assured that our sound is good. We also have Roy Stool that is doing our recordings and the live streaming, and IDTech for the live streaming. Thank you to you. Also to Coffee Inn, you will have your lunch parcels when you go to your office, or you can just sit here and just share again with all your colleagues that you haven't seen for a long time. And why are we doing this programs that we invited you to is the kickoff of the OD and employer well-being kickoff. The message that we really want to give to you is that the university cares, and we are part of OD and employer well-being, that we want to show that we care. So I'm just going to have a short overview about our programs that we will implement this year. I want to invite you as well. If you feel, well, can't you give us a topic on, let's say, a topic that's not on here, send us an email. You're part of the care. If we care for each other. So you're welcome to give us suggestions as well. Just to go quickly over the program, we have our kickoff event now, and that is the breakfast with management that we had this morning, and the lunch hour event that you are invited to. We have lunch and learn sessions that we will present, and we will call them Wellbeing Wednesdays. So be at the lookout for our invitations for the Wellbeing Wednesdays. Just some of the topics are healthy relationships and conflict management. Yes, colleagues, we do have conflict at home. Now we have it at home and at work, but because we don't know anymore how will we really handle conflict. So we will present that, generational differences, how to deal with my stress and anxiety, combating burnout and fatigue. We all get burnout from time to time if we don't look after ourselves. And then effective communication and being assertive. Then we will have roadshows. We will come and visit you at your departments. If you have a special need there, please contact us also for that. And then we've got special events, women's breakfast coming up. If you have the ladies sitting here, we will definitely do it in August. We will be around the tables in the Kali Himan. We believe we will have 7 women again attending. If you have a suggestion of a good speaker that you want to come and introduce to the staff at the university, you're welcome to contact us on that as well. And then we've got the other special events is the International Men's Day. We will have an amazing race. We will have mental health awareness in October, that we'll have a campaign on that. So that's the special events. Then, like the Well-Being Wednesdays, we also have Financial Fridays. Now, you will think, why did we decide on all these topics? We got feedback from you during lockdown, as well as the questionnaires that we sent out, and also from Careways and our 2 main medical aids, BestMed and Discovery, suggested that we really present some of these topics. So on just a note on Financial Fridays, budgeting, it's important, economic and psychological efficiency, debt and financial freedom, financial mindfulness. It's a program that will be on a Friday, once a month, Financial Friday, so please attend that. Then we also have OD initiatives. OD stands for Organizational Development, Performance Management, UFS SPOT program, and the recognition platform that we just started 3 weeks ago, and I think there's around about 600 that made use of the recognition platform. Please, when we send emails, read through that to recognize your colleague that really did you good. It's just something special. Wow, they do see all my energy that I put into my work. So we already suggest that you make use of that. And then team development sessions. If you need any team development sessions in your department, make a suggestion to your line manager. Maybe we can come and visit you there. And then employee engagement, that is very important as well. Continuous support, we have the I Am Employer Wellness Program that we will send in the invitations in the near future. Then Employee Assistance Program, the Careways. During this time that some of our colleagues got COVID, they also give their support there from Careways. If you have anxiety and you want to talk to somebody, Careways are there for you. It is free for our staff members, so please make use of that. Then we also have a nutrition and fitness journey. I see a few of my colleagues sitting around the tables that joined me for the nutrition and fitness journey. We have a workout at work again, that just after work we exercise. We will have our walks on campus as well, because it is important to look after yourself, to care for yourself through nutrition and fitness. Then we also have sporting events that will come up. We're going to play netball against each other again, and soccer. That's all in the planning for this year. So we are very excited about our program. But you are not here to listen to me this afternoon. You came to listen to Professor Johan Potgieter all the way from Northwest University. But I have good news. He started at Koffsies. He is from the UFS. So that's why we ask him to present. That is so many of our students just have where they are now and really know that they come from the UFS. So we are very proud. So I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker for this afternoon. Like I said, Professor Potgieter is a well-known clinical psychologist with his own private practice since 2003. Besides that, he has also been a part of the higher education industry since 2003, when he was a psychology lecturer at the UFS. Yes, he is one of us. He even completed his master's degree at the UFS. Unfortunately, he left us for the Northwest University in 2004, where he is now a professor in the psychology department. He has 36 publications in accredited journals, supervised 26 masters and 5 PhD students, and has been invited as a guest lecturer both nationally and internationally. And if this isn't enough, he also co-edited his essay textbook on positive psychology that is currently prescribed at the 3 South African universities and with no surprise, the UFS. He has specialized in the field of strength-based psychology, and his research interest is in the facilitation of resilience that we all need and in successful adaptation to optimal performance within any context that poses challenges in terms of the maintenance of one's psychological well-being. So this, ladies and gentlemen, meant why you came out of your offices this afternoon to listen and to really get positive input that we can change the university in a way. If we go out and we just change how our colleagues think, I think we can make a difference, because why are we on earth? To make a difference. Thank you, Professor. We're looking forward to listen to you.
Marina, thank you very much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Colleagues, welcome. Thank you for availing yourselves for a short while over lunch break to speak about something that I'm really passionate about. I just want to say first off that I'm very impressed with this program that you've presented. Until this afternoon, I did not know that there existed anything like an International Men's Day. So perhaps you must just send me those dates, and when I'm back at home, I'll make sure that the right people takes notice. Okay. Thank you very much. I am indeed the person standing between you and a lunch packet, so I'm going to make it it's an unenviable position, so I'm going to make it as brief as painless as possible, and hopefully there's something in this for you. As Irene said, I am originally from Koffsies. I studied here in 93 and 94, started off with medicine, and then I transitioned to clinical psychology, which I studied at Northwest for a couple of years, and then I returned back to Koffsies for my master's and my PhD around, 99 to 2003. And that was a very special time for me. That was really a transition that I had to make. I worked under the guidance of a gentleman, Professor Milan Haynes. I don't know whether any of you have crossed paths with this amazing person. He's now retired and living the good life in Hermanus in the Western Cape. But Prof. Haynes taught me a very important lesson, and that is that it is okay for even a clinical psychologist to be more interested in what's right with people than what is wrong with people. And that sort of factored into my professional career from there onwards. You always spoke about the alternative story. Yes, we all have our stories of strife and suffering and hardship, but there's always the alternative story about resilience and strength. And that's been my focus now. It's come to be called positive psychology, and that's been my focus now for 20 years. I've been studying and reading and writing and teaching and applying positive psychology wherever I go. And it's been an absolutely amazing journey. I want to start off this talk by sharing a story with you about two woodcutters. Some of you have probably heard the story. One of them looked like this, a slightly older and more experienced gentleman, and the other one looked like this. Yes, ladies, you thought you were coming here for a boring afternoon session? That's my treat to you. So obviously a much younger, stronger person, eager to please, eager to show his strength, and these two gentlemen engaged in a competition to try and see who could cut down the most trees in one given day. So on the day of the competition, they went off to the woods and they started chopping. And after about an hour or so, the elderly gentleman said, I'm going to take a bit of a break. Are you joining me? And the younger guy said, there's no way. I'm going to prove to you that I'm stronger than you, and I'm just going to continue chopping. And the older gentleman said, well, suit yourself. And this pattern sort of repeated itself for the rest of that day, with the older man taking frequent breaks. And then by the end of the day, the younger woodcutter was absolutely astonished when they started comparing to see that the older axeman had actually cut down significantly more trees than he had. And he asked him, so what is your secret? What have you been up to? I've been chopping away furiously the whole day. I'm dead tired, never took a break, and still you did better than I did. And the older man said, actually, each time that I took a break, I sat down and I sharpened my axe. And there's a bit of a lesson in there for us, and I think especially in post-COVID times, in this fast-paced world that we're living in, it's high performance and it almost feels like you're living in a drive-through. You have to push through every second. We hardly allow ourselves the time to sit down, breathe deeply, try and learn something, observe one another, and in the process sharpen our axe. Because I think it's common knowledge that a person does a much better job when you are mentally refreshed. You could get much more done, much more quickly, than when you try and push through from a place of mental perseverance in spite of being absolutely fatigued. So hopefully this afternoon will be an opportunity for you to sharpen your axe. On the way here, I listened to a young actor on the radio who said that his grandfather taught him, when you did a play and people leave that play unchanged, you have failed as an actor. And I really sincerely hope that you do not leave here totally unchanged today. Okay, the title of the talk is The Journey of Rising Strong, and I absolutely love this. It was suggested by Carmine and Arina and the colleagues at Organizational Development and Employee Wellbeing, and I think it's very appropriate because we are all on a journey. And that journey took us on a bit of a detour the past 2 years. I think you'd all agree. Unexpected obstacle in the road, and we are sort of off the highway of well-being, and we find ourselves on a 4x4 track, frantically trying to get back to normality at this stage. And speaking of journeys, maybe it's an appropriate time to show you a short bit of video about another journey. If I can just get it started here. Just as a little bit of background, this is part of a BBC documentary, BBC Earth documentary called Life Story, appropriately so, and it's all about barnacle geese and how they start their life journey. And yes, it's not for the faint of heart, just as a bit of a warning. It'll make sense later.
Perfect launch and a controlled drop. This is as good a descent as it's possible to make.
In October of 2020, I did a talk for a group of fly fishermen and felt afterwards like a total prophet of doom because we spoke about this life journey that we are on. And back then, all the talk was about flattening the curve. Do you remember that being the hype? And there was a brand new World Health Organization report out that said that we had actually internationally done an excellent job of flattening the curve. In other words, reducing the potential number of COVID-related deaths. But at the same time, something more sinister and even more significant was rearing its head. And it's now become known as the global mental health epidemic, or an emotional tsunami that's hit. Because what we've learned in the meantime is that even though the curve was flattened, we are only now seeing the consequences of the mental health impact that it's had. And through studying various previous pandemics and natural disasters, we know that the psychological impact of these events by far outlasts the physical impact that it actually has. So what has since transpired, if we look, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of stats today, but if we look very briefly at a summary, 34.1% of all employed workers have reported a significant drop in the level of mental health and well-being. 44.4% of all newly remote workers, and I think that includes us as a possible participant group. We all know about the challenges associated with working online and remote teaching. 48.5% of unemployed or retrenched workers, that makes a lot of sense. And then 85.5%, this is interesting, of furloughed workers. Now those include the individuals that have been cut loose by their organizations without any prospect, any real prospect of returning to a place of work. So it looks like that uncertainty has really wreaked havoc with these individuals' health and well-being. Perhaps important for today's talk, 40.5% of C-level employees report decreased mental health. That's almost half. And at an organization like a university, that would typically be the academic staff. It doesn't look like the management is much better off, though, with 40.1% of line managers and top managers also reporting significant drops in their levels of mental health. And I think if we think about it, it makes sense. Working from home has definitely messed with our heads. I mean, you finish the day, yes, I finished, 5 p.m. I can go home. And then you do a quick 360 on your desk chair, and where do you find yourself? Exactly where you started off, back in front of the screen at your home office. And that has definitely had a tremendous detrimental effect. I think we've all heard about it feeling more like staying at the office than it feels like working from home. And it's definitely turned out to be that for many of us. No shame in admitting there are definite advantages to working from home. It's become common practice for you not to wear proper pants even when meeting with your boss without him even noticing, so it makes for a very comfortable working environment. I don't know how many of you have engaged in this sort of unacceptable behavior. I see a couple of heads just slightly nodding, not wanting to admit to it before or in front of colleagues. So definitely there's been perks, but then on the flip side of that coin, Friday is not a Friday anymore. I mean, if you work from home, where do you go to for rest and relaxation, or just to punctuate the end of the working week? So there's definitely been some downs that accompanied the ups. Now, if we look at just a little bit of stats with regard to, and this is very specific to symptoms and signs of anxiety and depressive disorders, we see from, and this is a report from the Kaiser Family Foundation, unfortunately it's US data, but it's quite recent, and it shows there quite a worrying increase from 11% of people reporting these symptoms pre-COVID times. That's jumped almost fourfold, 41.1% of individuals reporting signs and symptoms of anxiety disorder and depressive disorder in January of 2021. In other words, after COVID started to have its effect. And then an interesting one for me from this report was they surveyed households with children under 18 years of age and found that 49.3% of women in these houses reported increased symptoms and signs of depression and anxiety, and 40.3% of men, so slightly better for the men. And I wonder, if I were to have you guess, what do you ascribe this to? Why would they survey adults in households with children under the age of 18 specifically? What could potentially contribute to one's anxiety and depression? Yes, you said it, ma'am. Homeschooling. I've definitely felt this firsthand. I have one in high school. I have one just finishing up with primary school. And I must tell you, I told the group this morning as well, grade 6 math absolutely broke me. That was just almost the end of me. We've all been here, day 7 of homeschooling, and already testing whether or not chloroform has a smell. And that's not because it's part of Bhuta's biology project. Or feeling like this. This is Sue, 31 years old. She's been homeschooling 4 kids for the past week, and she's looking like this and feeling like this. So absolutely, households with children, with young children, suffered as a consequence, and I can see that it resonates with a number of you. This is also interesting. From when we look at the age demographic, when speaking with my colleagues at Northwest University, we definitely feel as lecturers that we've borne the brunt of online teaching, and that we are the ones that are actually suffering. And there's a lot of truth to that. It's been a rough ride. But if we look at different age groups, it's interesting to see that youth or emerging adults ages 18 to 24 are actually the worst off. So those individuals that typically find themselves or would find themselves in our classes report at a rate of 56.2% an increase in these symptoms, and then a gradual decrease as we go through the different age groups. Looking at it from for different ethnic groups, once again, this is US data. It's clear to see that different ethnic groups are affected differently. And this is worrying because, and I'd be very interested to see what the equivalent stats in South Africa tells us, because if we see the same patterns in South Africa, this means that the people that can least afford it, the most vulnerable people out there, are actually worse hit by the mental health consequences of the COVID pandemic. So there's a lot of studies confirming abroad that there has been a huge mental health impact, this emotional tsunami that we've spoken about. What about closer to home? And Karine I want to refer to you guys as people and culture, employee wellness, have sent me this, and this was from a survey that was done on UFS staff asking, what are the specific well-being needs that you want to be addressed in future? And it resonates with what we've been discussing in terms of the international picture. The most common priority, or the highest priority, was for stress to be addressed. Anxiety is equally high. Those two equating to mental health, and then of course work-life integration, which tells me that integrating working at home, or now the new thing is coming back to work and having face-to-face conversations and maybe a bit of face-to-face teaching, is proving equally challenging. So getting that work-life balance right is definitely a huge challenge as well. So what's transpired? In terms of workshops, this just confirms it, that self-care workshops are indeed one of the important priorities that's been identified amongst University of the Free State staff. And I'm guessing that that's why you are here. So internationally, 2 new terms have been coined, and that's how bad it's actually gotten. The COVID stress syndrome. During the COVID syndrome, this term has been coined, and it's actually a syndrome of symptoms that would resonate with many of us. That is represented by a fear of infection. Remember the first cases that you heard about in your area, and how scared that made you initially of contracting the disease. Fear of touching contaminated surfaces. I think we're all more careful about where our hands go and what we touch these days. It resulted in an increase in xenophobia, because people coming from abroad might just bring the COVID infection along with them. COVID-related checking and reassurance seeking. The first person that visited in my office with the sniffles prompted me to want to go for a COVID test immediately, just to make absolutely sure that I've not been infected with this disease. And COVID-related traumatic stress symptoms that include intrusive thoughts and nightmares also are included there. And then an interesting one that some might be experiencing, and it's referred to as hikikomori. It's a Japanese term that's quite close to what we know as agoraphobia. Now, agoraphobia is the irrational fear of leaving your home and entering an open space where other individuals are present and that you might have difficulty escaping from. So there's definitely been an increase in the social distancing because of COVID stress syndrome, and I think that resonates with me to a large extent. Even, greeting other individuals, one's unsure of how to do that these days. Do you shake hands? Probably not. Do you give an elbow or high five or fist bump? Because hugs are definitely something of the past, it seems. So there's been an increase in social distancing. And our environment has sort of also contributed to this. Online shopping has boomed. It's much easier to buy something online than go to the shops. It's easier to stay at home and watch Netflix rather than go to the movies, or order your food online rather than go to Checkers. So it's associated with the times that we're living in, but there's definitely been this increasing social distance. And then something that many people definitely have felt, and that's persistent and chronic fatigue, just that feeling of being out of it constantly. So COVID stress syndrome has been affecting millions of people around the world. The same can be said. Now, can I just check, who's heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? I think most of us. Who's heard of post-pandemic stress disorder? Okay, I see one or two heads nodding, and I'm quite impressed because it was only in preparation for this talk that I read about this term. And as we go through the symptoms, just count maybe in secret underneath the table how many of these you have been experiencing or are perhaps now experiencing. Increased anxiety, feelings of hopelessness, low motivation, feeling out of control, disrupted sleep, an increased or decreased appetite, feeling numb, again, withdrawing from social situations, being easily fatigued, and catastrophic thinking, which is always imagining the worst. Those that are willing to share, how many of you have experienced or are experiencing more than 4 of these symptoms? I'm definitely in that group. So somewhere along the line, these were definitely true for me. And it's been found that you're actually not unique if you do experience this, because recent research says that more than 3 million people in the UK alone has been affected significantly by post-pandemic stress disorder. What's strange about this disorder is the fact that even though it's not been taken up into the DSM-5 yet, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, it's interesting that people are much less likely to go and look for professional help when they have these symptoms as compared to post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm wondering, if I were to have you guess what possible reasons for that could be. What would you guess? Why would a person be much more likely to go and look for professional help for post-traumatic stress disorder rather than post-pandemic stress disorder? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what would then, if everyone's experienced this, sorry? Yeah, so it's almost turned into the new normal, and going to look for help for it might cause with a person a bit of shame or guilt, and having to reach out for professional assistance while everyone is experiencing the burdens associated with COVID. Now, at this stage, I asked Karin and Arina this morning as well, you must be thinking, why have you asked Professor Potgieter to come and speak about this? This is supposed to be a well-being intervention, and upper, and all that we've spoken about are the illnesses. And I promise you, the strength part is coming. Abraham Maslow said, and he was summarizing psychology's focus when he said this. He said that the science of psychology much as my talk until now has been far more successful on the negative than on the positive side. It has revealed to us much about man's shortcomings, about his illnesses, his sins, but little about his potentialities, his virtues, his achievable aspirations, or his full psychological height. If it is as if psychology has voluntarily restricted itself to only half its rightful jurisdiction, and that the darker, meaner half. So it's almost like a balance. And up until now, today also, we focused on the illness part. We focused on the part that's really been tough and challenging. And you might be left thinking, so what remains to be said? Remember, we referred to Prof. Malan Heinz and the alternative story and being more interested in what's right with people than what's wrong? Here we go. COVID has not been our first rodeo. We've been through difficult situations before. It's definitely also not going to be our last. And it's interesting that research that's been done on previous pandemics and even natural disasters tell us the same sort of story over and over again. And that is that there is incredible resilience locked up in each one of us. About 2/3 of individuals that's gone through significant trauma or difficulty bounce back to their pre-trauma levels of well-being relatively quickly. So they recover quite well and quite quickly. And in addition to this, a number of these individuals show what's referred to as post-traumatic growth. Now, if you look at the graph there, it shows that we have a certain level of well-being before trauma hits. If that significantly challenging event happens, there's, of course, a drop in one's psychological well-being. Some individuals never recover fully. The majority of individuals, as we've said, recover relatively quickly to the same level of well-being that's preceded the trauma. But then there are individuals that show post-traumatic growth. So in terms of health and well-being, they actually come out better, more fully rounded, more resilient than they've done or than they were before this event happened. So this tells us about our inherent potential to grow and to develop, not in spite of the challenges that we're facing, but because of these challenges that we are facing. Science has been looking frantically for what makes the difference here. So what helps people not just bounce back to pre-COVID levels of well-being, but what would make the difference to help us jump forward to even higher levels of well-being? And if you've asked Dr. Google, or if you've seen the internet, went to search the internet, there are various techniques it's actually awash with techniques for recovering your well-being. We are advised to get regular exercise. Arina, I think you alluded to the fact it's going to be part of the wellness interventions that you're still planning, the campus walks that you were referring to and so on. So absolutely that's important. They do warn us there, though, to start off gently, not to be too hard on yourself from the get-go. They advise us to follow programs from practicing yoga to engaging in deep or belly breathing, a lot of these things, to get plenty of sleep, to socialize more, to set boundaries, to set aside more time for yourself, to find support, to spend time in nature. And there's value in all of these things. All of these things work. But a lot of people are left feeling quite demotivated when they read about these things that work, and they are unable to persevere on these courses of action to take themselves to that higher level of functioning. It's almost like visiting the self-help section at your local bookstore. You go to the psychology section, there's a self-help shelf there, you get books on the 7 habits of highly effective people, and it's a bestseller. It's sold millions of copies. So obviously, there's something to the content there. You buy the book, you read through it, and nothing changes. And you're left feeling even more like a failure, because why does it work for other people? Why is this book a bestseller and I can't lift myself out of this current situation? And my guess is that it's all about this little word, motivation, remaining motivated to make a difference. Motivation is a word it's an interesting word. It comes from the Latin movere, which means to move or to be moved to do something. So it's actually an action word. It requires you to take action, to take steps. And it is absolutely fundamental to your level of success in every walk of life. I recently came across this little video that I want to show you that captures this concept of motivation quite beautifully. Hits on YouTube. So she's become a bit of a celebrity after her parents posted that. Absolutely amazing. Can I just see by show of hands how many of you after the first video expected her to fall and hit stuff on the way down? Luckily not. Okay. So let's speak about motivation, which is so important to all of us, especially in these times. If you've read about motivation, you'll know that there are various ways in which we can categorize motivation. One of the most popular ones are distinguishing between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Now, you probably all know that extrinsic motivation is about engaging in behavior because you want to achieve a certain outcome. That outcome is the motivation for your behavior. So it can either be getting rid of a potential source of punishment. That's a little pitchfork behind you, held by your boss probably, or your wife, or whatever the case might be. Or you could be drawn to a certain reward. It could be a bonus, it could be any of a number of things, and that's the carrot on the stick that's held in front of you. Extrinsic motivation. You are motivated to engage in a certain behavior because there is a product, an outcome that's motivating you, that's external or outside of yourself. Intrinsic motivation looks slightly different. The outcome is not that important. Intrinsic motivation is about engaging in behavior because of the inherent qualities of that behavior itself, because of the fact that you might be having fun doing it, because you are experiencing a sense of purpose. There's personal growth from engaging in this behavior. It's a form of self-expression. It's in line with your core self. And that's referred to as intrinsic motivation because all of these motivators lie within the individual. And the behavior is engaged in because of its inherent worth, because of the fact that you are truly invested, engaged, and interested in pursuing this course of action. Now, thinking about your own behavior, whether it's at home or at work, which one of these two do you think is first prize, is the one that we're going for? Absolutely intrinsic motivation. Both will get people going, but research tells us that people persevere longer, they put in more effort, and they are more successful when they engage in behavior because of being intrinsically motivated. And we're lucky because it looks like it's possible to change what starts off as extrinsically motivated behavior to intrinsic motivation. And it's important for all of us. Now, how do we get more of this? How do we become intrinsically motivated to do what we need to do, whether at home or at work? And there's a beautiful, elegant, but very simple theory that explains it to us. And I love self-determination theory because of its simplicity, because of the fact that it absolutely lends itself to practical application in our own lives. What self-determination theory says is that we are all motivated by three universal human needs. We are all very complex and unique, but we all share these three universal needs that we need to have satisfied in order for us to experience intrinsic motivation and well-being. And I'm going to explain or just quickly describe each one of them to you. And then I'd like for you to sit there where you are and reflect on what has possibly frustrated you in terms of satisfying this need during COVID times. We had a couple of good examples from this morning's group, and I'm hoping that we'll get the same from this group. If we start with the first one, autonomy is the need to experience behavior that you are engaging in as voluntary and self-endorsed. I choose it. I'm set free from all external pressures. I'm not going to be punished, and I'm not going to be rewarded for this behavior. I choose it autonomically because it's important to me. I am the captain of my own ship. So in COVID times, what might have frustrated you in terms of satisfying this universal need, this need that we share with each other? Reflect on it quickly and think about what has possibly impacted negatively on this need of autonomy. Any thoughts? And please, I love for these discussions to be interactive. So if there's anything that you'd like to share, please don't be shy. There's a hand. Thank you. Thank you, Arina. Okay. So the lady said constant change and there's absolutely no control. We were constantly told that this is the change, this is what you need to do, and there was not a lot of personal choice in the matter. So definitely that impacted negatively on our sense of autonomy. Thank you very much. What else is there? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
The fact that I couldn't go anywhere or not where I wanted to go, and that I couldn't buy whatever I wanted to buy.
The lady says she couldn't go wherever she wanted to go. She couldn't buy what she wanted to buy. And absolutely, that's the truth. We got a very similar example from this morning's group. The lady loved jogging, and she said it was the biggest frustration not to have the freedom to move outside of 5 kilometers from your own house when she started jogging. Your freedom was just, it felt like for her, totally taken away from you. Out goes satisfaction of autonomy as a basic human need, which factors into intrinsic motivation. So definitely our autonomy suffered during the past couple of months, 2 years. I'm going to jump quickly over relatedness, going to come back to that, but competence is another basic human need. We need to feel effective. We need to feel that we know what we are doing and that we are actually making or doing a good job of it, making a difference. So during COVID, what aspects of your experience might have impacted negatively on your feeling of competence or the degree to which you would have been able to meet that particular need? Anyone? Yes, ma'am. It was absolute chaos. Yeah. Okay, so just to repeat, the lady says online teaching was a huge challenge. All of a sudden, everything had to happen online. You had to, if you used Zoom, keep your eye on the chat room to respond to students' questions while still focusing on what you're trying to present and get through to them. So all this new technology, it was wonderful. I think we learned so many tricks in a short period of time. But absolutely, starting off on that journey, we didn't feel very competent at all. First couple of Zoom meetings, someone mentioned from this morning's group, and there were a couple of managers involved in that discussion, went horribly wrong because people forgot to mute their microphones and switch off the videos, and with dire consequences for individuals. So for some reason or in various ways, our experience has impacted negatively on meeting this basic human need of feeling competent. Is there anything else that anyone would like to share in terms of competence? Okay, moving on to relatedness. That's the third of the human needs. It's the feeling that you're connected with other people, that you belong somewhere, that you care for people, that you are actually also cared for. And there are various obvious ways in which COVID has impacted negatively on our basic human need for relatedness. Let's mention them quickly. What were they? Arina mentioned one example, and I'm so glad I'm not from the UK. You said that there was a rule that when COVID started lifting, you could choose one person to socialize with outside over a distance of 2 meters. That would have been a terribly difficult choice for me to make. How else? Yes, sir, right at the back there. I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask you to use the microphone because of the broadcast.
Hello?
Yes.
Well, we were all death traps, basically, because everybody you were exposed to, you didn't know if you didn't get tested, you didn't know if you were sick or not. So you became a risk. So you're always thinking, okay, I must this, I must. Yes.
Okay, so the threat, what I'm getting, I don't think I got all of it. The threat was that we feared infection so much that we tried to stay away from people because you wouldn't know who's going to infect you.
And who you're going to infect as well.
And of course, yes, who we might infect. I was scared for visiting my parents because of the fact that they're elderly and exposed and vulnerable, and I might be a carrier and not even know about it. So in spite of spending a lot of time with our families during lockdown, we missed out on relatedness that we might have experienced at work. We need that interaction with colleagues. How wonderful is it to sit here across from each other at the table and share thoughts on these matters and be together here in one room instead of online. I had the same experience with my students. I just had the feeling from the outset that me as an online teacher is not half as effective as having them in class and engaging in a two-way conversation and being enthusiastic and feeding from their energy and enthusiasm. So there's a lot of this relatedness aspect that also suffered as a consequence. So it's no wonder that because of the fact that we have been frustrated in satisfying these three basic universal human needs, our intrinsic motivation and our well-being has suffered. But I love self-determination theory, not just because it offers us a good description or a good explanation of why we've been knocked off this highway of well-being. It also offers us a route map for the way back. Because what it basically boils down to is if we are able to create a social context where we can satisfy these needs that's been previously frustrated, intrinsic motivation will follow as a natural consequence. So you might have success stories to share. You might have ways in which you were able to satisfy these needs for autonomy and relatedness and competence in creative ways. Is there anyone that would like to share a gold nugget like that, or share a strategy that's worked that brought them closer to satisfaction of these basic needs? Yes, there's someone right here, I'm sorry, can you just wait for the mic? Thanks very much.
I think it relates possibly to what was a frustration for many people. For me, being in Bloemfontein from KZN with family, I know everyone is like, it was family time and my family is far away. So with that, what I was able to tap into is basic things like Skype and video calls and all of that, which is something that was always there. But because there was always an option of going to meet people.
Yes.
With COVID coming in, I was able to tap into, like, even now, me and my mom can video call, WhatsApp call, or like a Zoom, whatever meeting with the family. It's something that's more common now. So it's something that opened us up or forced us into social media work.
Thanks very much. That's a very good example. And I think we all share that. Thank goodness this pandemic hit when we had the technology that allowed us to remain in contact with our loved ones, even if they were far. That helped us satisfy this need for relatedness and feeling that we belong, and that we can actually care for other individuals as well. And the same for the other needs as well. For autonomy, people have created various creative ways of satisfying these basic needs. Practically, what it boils down to is, what would it entail for you to feel more autonomous in your job, you making more decisions? I think what's important there is for us to realize that we co-create our own social environments. And it's going to be possible for you to create an environment in which your colleague might feel more autonomous. You might be a manager or share an office with someone, and you might have a strong suggestion of a course of action to follow. What would help that person satisfy their need for autonomy if you give them a couple of, if possibly effective choices to choose from, for them to choose themselves, for them to express themselves emotionally about how well will each one of these choices take them towards their goals. And also for you to provide a rationale and explanation for why you are expecting this of them and why it's important, what the possible outcome is going to be. All of those things will factor practically into them feeling more autonomous. With competence, I think we've all experienced an increase in competence, especially with the technology that's been referred to. We learned so many tricks, so many new programs. Ma'am, how's it going with the online teaching now? Very well. It shows you how resilient we are. We're able to adapt, and we're able to learn these things, and it might still not be absolutely ideal, but we've managed. We've engaged with it, and we've managed. Another possible way to help your colleague develop a feeling of competence or having that competence need met is we're often too focused on the failures. Take, for instance, just as an example, a person who's trying to stop smoking, and then reporting back to you that they were able to stop, and then after 2 weeks they had a difficult experience and they had to smoke a cigarette, and it feels to them like an absolute failure. In actual fact, if you look at exactly the same story, the failure was preceded by 2 weeks of success, and it's a matter of focus. It's a matter of what you focus on. So by reframing, it's often possible to reframe an apparent failure into a short-term success, and in so doing, help your colleague to develop this feeling of competence. So as we said, I can tell you about self-determination theory. I can tell you it's as simple as meeting these 3 innate needs, but you are the experts in your own existence. You know what the challenges to these needs are in your own contexts, and it's going to be a question of going around with these mindfully and creatively and finding ways to help yourself and help others satisfy these basic human needs. And then it can turn into a process of heartbreaking loss that results in breathtaking recovery. So back to the barnacle geese. I'm hoping that you're interested in seeing how exactly that story ends. Let me just get there quickly. And I think the same can be said post-COVID. If I look at this room, and this last sentence that he concludes with says a lot. You know, if it was not for that dramatic start, they would have probably not gotten as far as they did in the first place. So it's incredible how we as human beings are also able to bounce back from those losses. I want to end off with the following. I don't know how many of you, it's another little story, are familiar with the Japanese art form. It's referred to as Kinsugi. Can I just see how many of you know about this? Okay, a good number of you. If I have the story, or it's one possible explanation for the origin of this art form right, it's that a Japanese emperor, it was in the 14th or 15th century, had this incredibly valuable ceramic bowl that he used for his tea parties or tea ceremonies. And I don't know whether there was a child or a grandchild involved, but this ceramic bowl landed on the floor. It was broken into pieces, and this guy was very upset with this incredibly expensive bowl having been broken. So he sent it to craftsmen in China, it said, and they returned it to him with these ugly metal staples that they used to put these pieces back together, and he was not happy or satisfied with that at all. And then he heard about a Japanese craftsman that used a different technique. What this guy used, and this is what he sent back eventually, was a combination of gold dust and resin, which he mixed, and he formed a sort of a glue with it, and then he glued these pieces back together, giving those wonderful patterns and shapes to the ceramic vases. And the emperor was absolutely ecstatic with the way it was returned. And his friends were so impressed that very soon, all over Japan, ceramic vases was being dropped and sent off to this craftsman. And it says something, or it's a good metaphor for the beauty that exists in brokenness, and the fact that we've all been chipped, or might have even been broken by this COVID pandemic, but it's all about the way in which the pieces are being put together. And if you have the right ingredients, and if you use the right process, there's a good chance of you leaving this process of healing even more well-rounded and more valuable and beautiful than you started it off with. And the ingredients that I'm leaving you with for today, for practical application and creative application in your own lives, is those 3 basic human needs. Go and look for opportunities to satisfy these needs in yourself and to facilitate the satisfaction of those needs in your colleagues, in your friends, in your family members, the needs for autonomy and competence and relatedness. And we all might end up looking this way. Thanks so much. I wish this journey for all of you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Professor Potgieter. I really think it is just really food for thought. So thank you for that. And I just want to invite you, if you realize that post-pandemic stress disorder, that you have a few of those symptoms, remember Careways. They are there for you. You phone the number. If you don't have it, you can just call me. We can give it to you. You can go and see a psychologist. It is free. We pay for you at the university because the university care. You're welcome to contact them and to just go forward and just enjoy. And you are here to make a difference, like I said. And remember, every journey begins with a single step. Maybe you have to make the phone call and start with that single step. And the other one is really you, the captain of your own ship. How are you going to use this information to really go forward, to make a difference, to show your family, to show your colleagues that you care? We did send out, I hope most of you got the fizzes that we sent out just to ignite the care in you. Because if we can be a university of care for our students, for our colleagues, for our staff members, then we will just be happier people. I think one of the questions is, after COVID, why am I not happy? But it is your choice what you will do. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Enjoy the afternoon and be what you want to be. Thank you so much. Okay, collect it there. Thank you. The food parcel's outside. Enjoy.
If I had